Greetings, classmates. Thank you for joining us for our debate. Before we dive into our topic of care versus empowerment, I would like to introduce our team over here. My name is Kaylee, and I'm the moderator for our team. On Team Pro, also known as Team Care, we have Dorsa as the prover and summarizer, and Laura as the stater and attacker. On Team Con, or Team Empowerment, we have Abby acting as the stater and attacker, and Allison as the prover and summarizer. Without further ado, let's move into our debate of care versus empowerment regarding service delivery for transition age youth and adults. The history of empowerment versus care for those on the autism spectrum is complicated. Still to this day, many on the Asperger's end of the spectrum, specifically women, are not diagnosed until late in life or are never diagnosed and live their lives thinking they are simply different from others. These people often live without supports or anything from the care side of the argument, but does this make them empowered if they don't know their diagnosis? On the other end of the spectrum, historically those with challenging behaviors used to have minimal societal supports available to them, were often sent to asylums, hospitals, or care facilities for the rest of their lives. If a family member did not have money to pay for their child's boarding fees at these kind of facilities, these challenging children were abandoned due to lack of resources, and even then, those diagnosed with what would later be called Asperger's, or now just autism spectrum disorder, would often be sent to care facilities as well, because their families or communities thought that they were odd. This is how Hans Asperger began his research with children on the autism spectrum at the Children's Clinic at the University of Vienna Hospital. Only in recent years have families begun to feel supported with the development of programs such as the Intellectual Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, No Child Left Behind Act, or NCLB, Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, ABLE accounts, supplemental security income, and others like the college internship program that prepares teens on the spectrum for college and beyond. But when teens on the spectrum are ready to leave high school, should they be sent to care facilities, empowered to be completely independent? Or is there a happy medium where a fusion of care and empowerment best benefits the student? To introduce our topic and get everyone in the right mindset, we have a short news clip from Fox 26 Houston about a home for students to transition to after high school, which helps prepare them for the real world. Think about how care and empowerment are intertwined in this space and work together to benefit the young adults living there.
Traditionally speaking, care has been the foundation of healthcare. The relationship between a provider and client is simple. The provider makes the decisions for the client. It has been successful all these years, even and up until today, and clients have been able to live healthy, happy, fulfilling lives.
According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, empowerment is the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. Apply empowerment to healthcare, and it can be defined as a process through which people gain greater control over their decisions and actions that can affect their health. Throughout history, different groups have been suppressed and have had to fight for their own rights. For example, women's rights were suppressed for a long period of time. Women fought for their rights and became more empowered. Today, they are no longer suppressed to the same degree. The same empowerment is happening, except the situation is with individuals and their rights in their own healthcare.
Empowerment requires the client to have a full understanding of the situation with their condition and treatment options available. Unfortunately, that is not an option for all clients. It is extremely time-consuming for a provider to explain the information to a client until they fully understand it. This can then become a financial burden on clients for the time spent wasted on explaining information that is probably still not understood by the client when the provider has dealt with several similar situations that have ended up just as good as those who had a say in their healthcare.
There is no one way to define empowerment. It simply is a redistribution of power between patients and physicians. It allows patients to have a say in their healthcare decisions. Empowerment is possible when clients are informed. It requires health literacy, digital literacy, self-efficacy, mutual respect, shared decision-making, and a facilitating environment. There is then a co-producer or new relationship that is established between a patient and physician, which is a shared power over decisions being made. Research has shown that patients who are empowered and are involved in their healthcare decisions are more responsive to treatment, and it is more effective. These individuals have a tendency to also be healthier over those who do not take a stand in their healthcare decisions.
What about those whose disabilities are too severe for them to make decisions about their health care? Empowerment requires the patient to have information and an understanding about their condition as well as different treatment options available to them. It is time-consuming for providers to educate their clients on the information regarding conditions and treatments to their patients, which then leads to a financial burden on the patient for taking up the provider's time. Care has been the way for provider-client relationships since forever. It has been working up until now. Why make changes?
Maybe, however, research has found that those who are empowered and given an equal say in their healthcare are more likely to have successful treatment and live a healthier life. According to the BACB Ethical Compliance Codes, Code 4.02 involving clients in their planning and consent is our responsibility as a behavior analyst to involve the clients in their healthcare decisions. Also, according to Code 2.09, a client has the right to effective intervention and treatment. Clients are not cookie cutters, and no intervention is one size fits all. Code 4.03, Individualized Behavior Change Program, states that treatment should be individualized to best suit the needs of each client.
Care is a safe, efficient way of providing medical treatment to clients. It is the traditional way of providing care and has been effective up until today. Care has not always had the most ethical history. However, developments are continually changing for the better, and the best interests of clients are being included in the treatment for the clients.
Yes, empowerment can take more of a provider's time to help them understand their condition and treatments. However, with today's technology, there is access to information about the client's condition and different treatments or resources that are easily accessible. Also, empowerment is a sharing of power in the choices made in healthcare. Not a patient takes total control of healthcare decisions. Empowerment can also take place in different levels. For instance, someone who is on this autism spectrum disorder and extremely high functioning could be able to make decisions on their future about whether or not to go to college or start a career, live at home, or move out, while someone lower functioning on the spectrum could help in the decision making of which facility to live in or if they should stay at home with their parents. Empowerment is allowing the patient to have a choice in their healthcare, not full control.
Excellent points, ladies. Now, Team Care, why don't you get us started off with talking about our next topic of education and policy?
Many individuals with disabilities, such as ASD, need the care of a special education classroom. Their individual needs and goals should be considered. The goals of these individuals may not be equal to the academic goals of other children in the class. These individuals qualify for an individualized education plan or IEP. They may require more support than their typical peers and can benefit from a more individualized learning environment. They may require the one-on-one supervision and care from a teacher trained to work with them. Many individuals with disabilities, such as autism spectrum disorders, have severe behavior and cannot thrive in an inclusive classroom. Specialized education in a smaller classroom setting with trained educators is more beneficial to these individuals.
According to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, individuals with ASD and other disabilities are afforded the same right to public education and services in a least restrictive environment. The Public Law 11495, known as the Every Student Succeeds Act, was passed in December 2015. These acts promote independence and empowerment of individuals with disabilities. Participation in public education inclusion classes strive to give individuals with disabilities as much independence and empowerment as possible. Individuals are better prepared to make their own decisions and have increased social abilities when they are made an active member of their own transition team.
Individuals with autism spectrum disorder have complex service needs. They exhibit more challenging behaviors and need more individualized care than their typical peers. Some educators argue that inclusion in typical classes and forced interaction with their peers can distress these individuals with disabilities. It may be overwhelming and not the best environment to learn at their own pace.
Individuals with disabilities such as autism spectrum disorders have the right to a public education equal to that of their neurotypical peers. They have the right to accommodations necessary to ensure their success in a typical classroom. Many individuals with disabilities succeed in an inclusion class with the aid of paraprofessionals, therapists, extended test times, and other accommodations necessary to succeed. Clough and Nutbrown argue that disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of individuals to participate in or contribute to society. Improving educational results for children with disabilities is an essential element of our national policy of ensuring equality of opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities.
Students with disabilities can be overlooked by teachers in inclusion classes and often struggle to keep up with their typical peers. Their accommodations may not be held up, and they can fall behind with the quick pace of typical curriculum. Furthermore, they may be ostracized in inclusion classes. Other students may lack the knowledge, patience, or sensitivity, and students in inclusion classes are often targets of bullying. There's also a significant lack of educators properly trained to work with students with disabilities. Even if properly trained, many teachers have large classes and still are not able to dedicate time to each individual student to ensure that the student with disabilities is actually succeeding.
Individuals with disabilities who remain in specialized classes do not learn the skills necessary to succeed after school. They miss out on socialization with their typical peers that they may have received in inclusion classes and the communication skills that this teaches. The students in special education classes are often isolated from other students in the school. They may feel left out in comparison to students who have the opportunity to be in inclusion classes. In addition to this, students who remain in special education classes under stricter care may not be as active in their transition plan and are not included or prepared for their transition after school to the full extent possible.
Autism is a wide spectrum diagnosis, with individuals of all ability levels being diagnosed with this disorder. While inclusion into typical classes is possible for some students, many require heavily aided and individualized care. This is not always possible in an inclusion setting. Some individuals are not able to succeed in a regular class size. Under IDEA, individuals with disabilities such as autism are given the right to the best possible public education relative to their peers. They deserve the best education available, which is often in a special education classroom setting with an individualized curriculum and more attentive care from their teachers. Many teachers argue that inclusion as a concept is still possible for students in a special education classes through inclusion of the whole class in a school-wide event as well as body programs.
According to Rowe, Shattuck, Ross, Rava, and Anderson, and shown in the subsequent visuals, approximately 1/3 of people with ASD attend some sort of college in their 20s. This is seen to be lower than their peers with other disabilities. Learning social skills and communication is crucial for an individual to succeed in a post-secondary educational setting. For individuals with autism or related disorders to learn these skills, it is necessary to have individuals in inclusive classes integrated into their schools whenever possible. Teaching these students independence and empowering them to be as independent as possible is key to success after leaving school. These skills also enable individuals to take an active role in their transition plans.
Thank you, ladies. Now, before I hand it over to Team Care again to discuss economics, I have an introductory thought to get you all in the right frame of mind. Having a child with a disability or being a young adult with a disability has its financial hardships, not only as an individual or family, but as a society as well. Here we will hear the discussion of the care side, who believes Medicaid is a reasonable option for everybody with a disability, while on the other hand, the empowerment side feels Medicaid is great on an as-needed basis, but that individuals should strive to support themselves financially, which includes private insurance.
Numerous financial programs are in place for children and adults with disabilities, including Medicaid, CHIP, state subsidies, early intervention programs, and SSI to assist in caring for people with disabilities, as well as school programs such as special education services. These are essential programs put into place to ensure the care of millions of people who have a disability, including but not limited to ASD. Many people with disabilities are unable to care for themselves, and this includes their finances as well as health care coverage.
Medicaid is expensive to taxpayers, and we should focus on providing opportunities for more people with disabilities to have gainful employment, which would include benefits such as health insurance. We should focus our energy on teaching life and work skills to children instead of focusing on academic skills. Medicaid can still be used as a wraparound service instead of a primary service for more individuals to help boost the economy and provide empowerment to all of our citizens. As a system, we already pay high costs for special education at school, and we should focus more on empowerment skills so individuals can make their own decisions, attempt to support themselves financially, and rely less on the systematic care from government agencies if they choose to do so.
According to Henry Kaiser Family Foundation 2018, there are approximately 14.2 million children with special health care needs in the United States, and half of these children are on Medicaid. Both children and adults rely on these services for care. Some of the services provided are medical insurance, speech therapy, early intervention, behavioral interventions, occupational therapy, rehabilitation, job services, as well as residential care. Many groups of people are unable to care for themselves or make their own decisions regarding insurance and their personal finances. They would be unable to support themselves financially, and therefore these programs are very important.
Medicaid spends almost $200 billion a year for caring for people with physical and intellectual disabilities. That is about 1/3 of its budget, although only about 13% of those enrolled in Medicaid are disabled. If we can focus on empowering individuals and teach appropriate life skills as well as career skills, this number could decrease drastically. Even if we focus on job interviewing skills, this could help tremendously. In fact, some highly qualified college graduates with ASD will interview upwards of 100 times before they land a position because even though they are qualified on paper, they can't pass the interview process due to a lack of social skills. This is a prime example of somebody who is empowered to make choices in the aspect of their life, specifically their career, but is hindered by our current culture. If we focus more on educating these students and job seekers on appropriate job skills, including social skills, interview skills, then we could help these young adults find gainful employment, which would result in financial independence and autonomy.
I understand the point of view regarding providing empowerment to people with disabilities, but the reality is many people are unable to provide for themselves, which includes their finances and insurance. We have a social welfare program set up specifically for this reason. With Medicaid services, we know many things are covered, which is not guaranteed with private insurance companies. Also, you mentioned how students with ASD should focus more on life skills or employment skills instead of academics, but this would be a step backwards. Inclusion is important in schools, and if that means children learn academics, then so be it. You provided a story about a college graduate who interviewed almost 100 times before he could land a job. And as great as that is for him, this is not sustainable for many people. Many and most would give up before they reached 50 interviews, let alone 100. It's a great anecdote, but also goes to show we need a system in place to care for people. It may take away some autonomy, but it's better in the long run.
Medicaid is not always going to be reliable. There was discussion of cutting Medicaid spending back in 2017 when the current president wanted to overhaul the system. This could have decreased Medicaid by 33% by the year 2026. Although this did not occur, it raises concerns that Medicaid could be cut drastically, and then what would all the people who rely on it do? Not only that, but many ABA clinics are already struggling because Medicaid is not paying as much for services as private insurance does. This not only impacts the clients, but also impacts the clinics in which they're participating and negatively impacts the economy. Having people be more independent and empowering themselves to be financially and economically independent would make more financial sense and result in more autonomy. With proper training and assistance when needed, many people with disabilities are able to make their own decisions, and this should apply to their financial decisions as well.
Well, you can have various examples of what ifs, but the reality is that approximately 7 million children are on Medicaid, and it's a great system to care for children as well as adults with disabilities. It would be doing a disservice to expect all people to provide for themselves financially and to have private insurances. Even though my opponent states that it's a burden to society, I do not see it as such. This is a great way for us to take care of our all citizens because some of them are not able to do so independently.
My opponent believes we should care for individuals instead of providing adequate resources for them to make important decisions for themselves, such as finding gainful employment with benefits. Although I agree we need Medicaid and other welfare services. I disagree that we should be completely reliant upon them. This hurts our economy and potentially children and young adults who need special services such as ABA therapy. We need to focus our efforts on training skills for after school so individuals with disabilities and or ASD are more likely to be able to support themselves or at least be given the opportunity to try.
Excellent points again, ladies. Who knew autism and economics were so intertwined? Again, before I let Team Care get us going on the topic of health, I have some thoughts to get the conversation started. Factors such as other medical conditions can impact care versus empowerment for individuals with ASD and other disabilities. For instance, several medical, mental, and neurodevelopmental conditions co-occur with autism. In higher functioning adults, anxiety and depression are common. Epilepsy, behavior problems, and sleep disturbance are common among lower functioning adults with individuals with autism. Research shows that common medical conditions among individuals with ASD are seizures, obesity, insomnia, and constipation. Moreover, seizures, depression, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder occur more in adults with ASD than in the general population.
Autism is a spectrum, and individuals with ASD do not fall in a clear spectrum referred to as low functioning or high functioning. Factors such as language, communication, daily living skills, sensory issues, emotional regulations, and need for consistency depend on environment, stressors, and supports. Individuals with ASD experience healthcare issues because many autism features directly affect their healthcare, including failure to accommodate communication, sensory integration, and executive functioning. Due to their limitations, clinicians may make false assumptions about their abilities. Therefore, individuals with ASD may not be able to make healthcare decisions on their own and need more care from professionals.
Providing accommodations and appropriate support for patients with autism can improve patients' independence and their quality of life. Clinicians and patients with ASD need to work together to find effective strategies and accommodations necessary to overcome barriers to their care. Clinicians can do a full differential diagnosis that includes medical and psychosocial causes.
However, referrals to a right therapist or a clinician who have experience with patients with autism is limited, as even many autism professionals lack experience with adults with autism. We also need to consider parents' health. Parents have a role as moderator, and their medical and mental health can influence care and empowerment for their children. According to WEAS 2015, mothers of children with autism experience crisis and significant amounts of distress. They may experience mental health conditions that can impact the care as well as the autonomy of individuals with disabilities and autism. Proper care from qualified professionals would potentially prevent some of these negative effects because an outside observer is involved.
Accommodations such as assistive technologies, therapies, and services can assist patients with ASD and improve their quality of life. For instance, assistive and augmentative communication technology can improve communication for adults with limited or variable speech. In addition, using coping strategies, treating co-occurring conditions, and providing support and access to accommodations can address their individualized needs. These technologies and techniques all help provide autonomy and independence within the community. It also provides more opportunity for empowerment of the individual because it allows them to have a voice and a choice. Patients should be involved in choosing their therapies. Research shows that effective physician-patient communication correlates with improved patient health outcomes. Moreover, mental health therapy can help individuals with autism to develop strategies to address their communication limitations, sensory issues, and social situations. It is important to find therapists who have experience working with individuals with autism.
Resources such as local autism organizations, developmental disability programs, and professional organizations can refer therapists with expertise working with adults with autism, or they may provide services themselves in order for the clients to receive the best care possible. Vocational rehabilitation services are another resource where adults with ASD may obtain referrals for therapists. As Dykins et al. Suggests, Professionals can improve long-term caregiving for individuals with developmental disabilities by addressing the caregiver's mental health needs as well. Cognitive behavioral approaches can also help parents to cope through emotional and problem-focused techniques and consequently improve the care for their children and their quality of life.
My opponent mentioned rehabilitation services. However, a study conducted by Laura et al. Showed that individuals with ASD are more likely to be denied services by vocational rehabilitation systems because their disability may be too severe for them to benefit from services compared to other individuals who may be served by these vocational services. Also, the cost of services are more expensive for people with autism spectrum disorders than individuals with other impairments.
Factors impacting the healthcare for individuals with ASD need to be addressed by professionals. There are not many professionals experienced with the limitations of patients with autism, and there is a need to address this at an educational and systematic level, including training clinicians, providing adequate and individualized accommodations and support for patients and their families for sure. According to the BACB Compliance Code of 3.02 Medical Consultation, behavior analysts recommend seeking a medical consultation when there is a possibility that a certain behavior is influenced by another factor like biological or medical factors. Considering the limitations associated with autism, clinicians need to make sure that autism-related behaviors do not affect their diagnosis and care as well. In order to provide the best care for individuals with disabilities and ASD, healthcare professionals need to address the factors mentioned earlier. The Code of 4.02 also applies here, as it states that treatment should be individualized based on the individual's needs and goals.
It is true that there are factors such as availability of support, complexity of the healthcare system, and accessibility of healthcare accommodations affecting healthcare for individuals with ASD. However, we can empower patients by training providers, increasing the accessibility of the healthcare system and accommodations for individuals with disability, including those with ASD. Academic Autistic Spectrum Partnership Research and Education offers a great interactive tool called Autism Healthcare Accommodations Tool for patients and supporters that allows them to create an individualized plan and accommodations for healthcare. You can access the tool at autismandhealth.org.
Thank you, ladies, for that information about health and health insurance and how it affects these students as they transition out of high school. To wrap up our debate, we have a couple of parting thoughts we wanted to leave our audience with. Team Care and Team Empowerment have put their heads together to come up with some improvements that can be made in terms of care and empowerment. These include training staff on how to encourage empowerment into clients, specifically these transition age youth, through the power of choice, such as making educated decisions, and giving the clients choices to feel empowered, such as do you want to go for a walk after lunch or do you want to play basketball? And as well as implementing empowerment programs in special education classrooms starting in elementary school where choices and decision making can gradually increase in difficulty as the child gets older. For example, perhaps in an elementary school, a child chooses whether to play with Play-Doh or color during free time. In middle school, the student can choose between 2 books to read for class. And in high school, the student can choose their topic for their final project in a class. We hope we've given you some new concepts to consider when working with clients on the spectrum, as well as their parents, families, and other professionals. From all of us here, thank you for watching our debate on care versus empowerment in regard to service delivery in transition age youth and adults.